Welcome to Code Report. I'm your host, Connor Hoekstra. Let's take a look at the contest that happened last week.
We had 6 contests last week. Code Forces announced round 476, which took place on Wednesday, and round 477, which took place this morning. We had the Code Chef Lunchtime contest and the weekly LeetCode contest yesterday, and we also had the Google Code Jam second online round of that tournament. And finally, we had the Hacker Earth April Circuits contest, which is ending in the next day. Taking a look at the top 10 leaderboards from our Code Chef April Lunchtime contest, we had Gennady, or known as Tourist, taking first place. We also had Yui taking first place in the LeetCode contest. Moving over to the Code Forces contest that took place, Yui placed second in round 476, and we had Fate Ice placing in first in the round 477, as well as Petra and Tourist falling up in second and third. So due to those 2 contests, more specifically the round 477, we had a bit of movement in our top 10 leaderboard for Code Forces. Umnek went from 3rd place to 2nd place. 000 dropped down to 6th. Fate Ice managed to get back in the top 10, and Petra and Tourist stayed in 1st and 5th respectively. The problem that we'll be covering in today's video is problem 1 from the Code Chef April Lunchtime contest entitled 2 versus 10. The problem states Chef 2 and Chef 10 are playing a game with a number x. In one turn, they can multiply x by 2. The goal of the game is to make x divisible by 10. Help the chefs find the smallest number of turns necessary to win the game. It may be possible to win in 0 turns, or determine that it is impossible, in which case we will return a -1. So this problem is pretty straightforward, but it only had a 50% success rate. So let's take a look at how to solve it. So here is our input that Code Chef gives us. The first number 3 is n, which is the number of test cases, and then we have 10, 25, and 1, which are our values of x. So given these input, we should output the following. 10 is already divisible by 10, obviously, so it takes 0 turns. 25, if you multiply it by 2 once, gives us 50, and that's divisible by 2. And then 1 will never be divisible by 10, regardless of how many times we multiply it by 2. So initially you might think the way to solve this problem is by just taking your number x, creating some for loop or while loop, and multiplying it by 2 over and over, and just checking each time if it's divisible by 10 at this point. But that won't deal with the case where it's not divisible ever at any point, because it'll just be an infinite loop. So I'm guessing that's the part that people had trouble with. And if we think about this a little bit more carefully, we'll notice something really simple, and that's that 10 has the factors 2 and 5. So in order for a number to be divisible by 10, it has to have one of its factors be 2 and one of its factors be 5. And specifically because we're multiplying the number by 2, we know at some point after at least one turn it'll be divisible by 2, and that means that we basically only need to check whether the number is divisible by 5 to deal with this case. And so if it's not divisible by 5, we know at no point will we get both the factor 2 and 5, because we're only multiplying by 2. So if our number that we're given isn't divisible by 5, we will just return -1. And then after we've checked that, we can just check, is it already divisible by 2? If that's the case, we know it's already divisible by 10, so just return a 0. Otherwise, return 1, because we know that if it already contains a 5, which is our first check, then all we have to do is check if there is a 2, and if there's not, we only need to apply it once, and then we know. So the only answers that you're ever going to give are 0, 1, and -1. So once we can figure out that, it's a pretty simple problem to implement. So let's take a look at our code. So for our C++ solution here, we can see we're just reading in our n and then creating a while loop that's going to iterate n times. We read our x, and then we just have the following. So if x is divisible by 5, then we'll check if x is divisible by 2. If it is, we'll output 0. If it isn't, divisible by 2 here, but it's still divisible by 5, output 1. And if it wasn't divisible by 5, just output -1. And this will be the exact same thing in our Java and Python solutions. So Java looks similar, a little bit different when it comes to reading the input in, but we can still make use of the ternary operators and the modulus operator. And then we're looking at our Python solution, and it doesn't have the ternary operators, but it does have syntax that can replicate it. And the last thing to do is talk about the complexity, and this is obviously a constant time complexity. Taking a look at the contests happening next week, we have a very busy week with 6 contests, starting with in the early hours of the morning at 12:30 a.m. on Tuesday from Hacker Earth, the May Easy contest, and then later on in the morning from Code Forces, we have round 478. On Wednesday from Hacker Rank, we have the contest 101 Hack 54. On Thursday, we have the second online qualifier for the Top Coder Open tournament. On Friday, we have the start of the Code Chef Maylong Challenge. And on Saturday, we, of course, have the weekly Leak Code Contest 83.
As always, if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, hit that like button. If you want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on Twitter for reminders 30 minutes before contests start, and you can find all of the code shown in my videos on my GitHub page. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.